These stories are from the point of view of a female. I found myself living alone at the age of 19 after kicking out my lazy boyfriend for not getting a job and helping with the housework. I wasn't very fearful about the solitude, as I worked late and would ride the bus home from work for hours alone to show up to an empty apartment anyways, and had always managed to escape potentially creepy situations through common sense and possession of pepper spray and a cell phone. My neighborhood was a bit sketchy, about 2 miles from the Las Vegas Strip, so the streets were always occupied by all different types of people at all hours of the night and day. So I wasn't too worried about people jumping at me from the shadows with so many witnesses around. I was actually looking forward to the privacy and freedom living alone would bring. For weeks, I went about my business, going to work in the early afternoon and returning late at night, usually around 1 a.m., always careful to watch my surroundings and making sure I wasn't being followed. My one-bedroom apartment was located in a building at the edge of the complex, about 25 feet from the last building of the complex, which was undergoing remodeling. I thought such a place may be privy to squatters, so would be wary and scan that area before walking to my door. One night, not long after I had gotten home, my doorknob began to jiggle. I immediately assumed it was my ex, who would know what time I'd be home and would sometimes show up to try and reconcile. I didn't walk to the door, but rather texted him and asked if he was at the door. He quickly replied he wasn't, and that I should call the police. By then, the knob had stopped moving and I gathered the courage to walk to the window, 911 dialed into my phone and pepper spray in the other hand. I didn't see anything, and assumed that it was probably a confused drunk and decided to shake it off. I installed a chain lock on my door the very next day, just in case. Nothing obviously out of the ordinary occurred until weeks later, when a new guy I had been seeing and myself were watching Buffy in the bed very late at night, and something possessed me to peek out my bedroom window. From this window I could see my front door about 10 feet away, and directly in front of it was a dark figure hunched up, seemingly staring down at the doorknob. I gasped and looked on in a confused shock for a few seconds before getting away from the window and telling this new boyfriend of mine that there was someone standing at the door. He assumed I was playing a prank on him and didn't get up to check without a minute of incessant prodding. By the time he'd gotten up, the figure was gone, and we again assumed it was a silly drunk. Nights later, we were having sex by the glow of the TV in my bedroom when one of my cats jumped from the windowsill, loudly parting those vertical vinyl apartment blinds and exposing a dark figure directly in front of my window. I froze and whispered to my boyfriend that someone was at the window, and he froze as well. We turned off the TV so the person could no longer see inside and witnessed a shadow walking away by the contrast of the outside lights visible through the tiny gaps behind the blinds. The next night, a neighbor of mine came by and warned that she had seen a peeping Tom at her window the night before as well. So I just assumed that this person was a somewhat harmless pervert and decided to get myself a dog to ward him off. I found myself a young Great Dane Black Lab mix with a deep bark and would walk him around the perimeter every night with my pepper spray and flashlight to make sure no one was creeping around. I'd throw the blinds open in a violent fashion anytime I felt someone was about to stop in front of my window, staring at people in a knowing way, probably terrifying many passers-by. Idiot that I am, I'd sometimes even climb the tree in front of my apartment and keep watch in the dark during the times he would come around, just to catch him in the act and get a good description for the police. Some days went by without any action, and I found myself walking home from the bus stop at 1 a.m. as usual. I could see my building through the gate on the street I was walking on, and my heart stopped when I saw the dark figure hunched in front of my door again. I had to go around a corner onto the street up ahead in order to enter the complex, so I ran up there with 911 dialed and ready to call, finger on the pepper spray button. Once I reached my building, I tiptoed around the corner, heart pounding, ready to spray, to find no one at my door and no one around. I knew someone had been there for sure. because my 3 cats were all at the window next to the door already, and they would do that whenever they heard someone at the door. I entered my apartment and the dogs seemed to be excited as well. Later that night, I was in my bedroom in the dark and heard someone staggering by on the sidewalk next to my window. And suddenly, an incredibly loud pound on the window as someone threw their body into it. This is it, I thought. He's going to try to get me. The window did not break, and I heard a loud, "Sorry," as I saw a shadow stagger away and found myself suddenly ducked on the floor, phone in hand, dog barking away. I felt dumb for mistaking a clumsy drunk for the perpetrator this time and was skeptical with further incidents. Things stayed quiet for a while again, and I had my boyfriend over another night. At about 3 a.m., I decided to run to the gas station down the street and walk my dog while my boyfriend slept. I returned 20 minutes later, entered my bedroom, and laid down next to him, back to watching TV. Not 2 minutes later, there was a shadow at the window, very close, hunching over to look inside. My boyfriend was awake at this point and saw it too. We looked on in shock for a minute, and then my boyfriend shouted, "What'd it do?" and the shadow ran off. The next morning, there was a big slash in the canvas covering to my boyfriend's convertible. It scared me that I had just been outside with the person and that they must have seen me out there to come to my window right after, and I had not seen them. It occurred to me that this had to be a neighbor and that I must pass their apartment every time I come home. So I started taking a different route every night and trying to make my return times more erratic to throw him off. The sound of my cats jumping to and from the windowsill would wake me up all through the nights. I became paranoid and hyper-aware of every sound in the night, every person walking past my door. I sort of got the sense that I might be overreacting if I called the police, assumed there was nothing they could do if I called them, and didn't want to show my fear by having them come by. I began to stay at my boyfriend's house some nights when I felt I couldn't handle the tension, but had to return often to care for my cats and dog and pick up belongings. I so terribly wanted to stay home with my pets and to live life without the paranoia of someone watching me, and I would try to go about life normally most days. Sometimes, I'd see the shadow at the window or hear tapping as I was drifting in and out of sleep, find piles of rocks in front of my door and even a dead bird, but most days I just became numb to the fear and convinced myself these were isolated incidents, and assumed that if they were dangerous, they would have done something already. Things remained mild for a while. Then I found myself staying at the hospital for a week, as my boyfriend had been hospitalized due to pancreatitis. I would send family to my apartment to care for my pets that day. I finally returned home after his surgery, and had pretty much gotten this peeping Tom out of my mind, not even looking for anything unusual at this point. The next day would be my first day returning to work since attending to my boyfriend, and I was coming in earlier than usual. When I came in, my coworkers were surprised to see me and asked why I had decided to come in. Apparently, a male voice had called earlier, providing my first and last name and saying that I wouldn't be making it into work that day, supplying no explanation, and hung up. A close friend of mine had been the one to answer the phone and told me how she found it unusual since she didn't recognize the voice as my boyfriend or my brother's, the only 2 males I could fathom ever calling with my name. I called them just in case, and they said they hadn't called in to work for me and had no reason to. I never did find out who called or why, but I didn't return home from work that night, sort of fearing that someone would be waiting for me. I stayed at my boyfriend's most of the time the next few weeks until my lease was up, and I hightailed it out of that apartment. Looking back, I really should have just called the police to get those incidents on record and to show that I was aware that he was out there. I wonder how many times he had seen me through the gaps in those annoying vertical blinds without me being aware, walking around naked, sleeping, enjoying false privacy, and it just feels disgusting. Was he stealing my mail? keeping track of my work schedule, plotting something weird. There were just too many weird happenings for them all to be isolated incidents. Maybe I've read too many creepy anecdotes and serial killer biographies, but I do feel as if I could have been in danger and was a pretty good target for a first victim of some demented creep in the infancy of his perverted career. I'm currently living in a student house with 3 other students and have a ground floor room at the front of the house with big bay windows. The curtains I have are quite good at blocking out the sun, apart from the fact that they are about 4 inches too short to cover the whole window. Because of this, at night I put rolled up blankets on the sill to cover the gap. I had just come back from dinner with my boyfriend, and after he left my house, I was just sitting on my bed with my back to the windows, playing on my phone. Too lazy to actually get up and do something. Bear in mind, I had no music on, and I didn't have the TV on. My housemates were either working, sleeping, or not in. During a riveting game of Scrabble on my phone, I tune into a weird noise. I think it had to have been going on for a while, but I didn't notice until then. It sounded like someone had their face very close to the window and was breathing heavily. Sometimes my boyfriend does this to scare me, so I turn to give him a look to say, "You're not getting any tonight." And I see this unfamiliar face dodge out of sight. I freaked out and went straight into my housemate's room to tell her and see if we could see the creeper running off. She tells me a friend who lives nearby had a creepy guy in her back garden just today, looking into her conservatory. I don't know if it was some kid trying to scare me, or if it was a peeping Tom looking for some action. I was fully clothed, long sleeves, so not exactly sexy, or someone looking for an easy house to break into. Either way, I will not be sleeping easy tonight. I'm a senior in college now, and this story is from my first week of freshman year. That time of year when every 17 and 18-year-old freshman has no solid friends yet. I attend a party school, so the move-in weekend before classes is pretty crazy. I went out with some newly met girls, got drunk at a frat, and most definitely didn't remember the names of anyone I met. So, it's the first Tuesday of classes, and I can't find a friend to walk to campus with. I start my day with a coffee from Starbucks, and as I leave the coffee shop, I get stopped by this guy who insists that he met me a few days ago this weekend. I assume I probably did meet him, considering I didn't remember anyone's names, or even faces really. He was an overtly friendly and handsome guy, so when he offered to walk me to my class, I was down. He had also asked me for my number and whatnot, and being an 18-year-old idiot who hadn't faced creepy men in my small town of origin, I gave it up, thinking it was totally chill. We start the walk with small talk. I tell him what dorm I'm in, what class I'm going to. Stupid. Anyway, the walk is really only about 10 minutes. I can't remember the conversation exactly, but I will say that things started creeping me out real fast. I recall him saying we should meet up at night and watch movies at his place. A little fast, don't you think? I had told him I was early for class, so he insisted on waiting with me just outside the building. He dropped this great line, "I'm a massage therapist, you look stressed," and started rubbing my shoulders. Yes, he touched me. I was mortified, but froze up and went with it. Like I said, I had never faced this kind of situation before. Finally, I escaped and went to class. The next few hours were so nerve-wracking. I thought he would be waiting outside for me, so I slipped out the other side of the building. He was calling from random numbers. He said he didn't have a cell phone, and texting me asking me to meet. I ignored it all, and of course, I had no friends yet, or people to call and say, "Help, this guy is creeping me out. Can I hide at your place for a day?" I thought I made it through the whole day without running into him again, until I saw him talking to girls in front of my dorm dining hall. I literally ran up the stairs and hid inside the dining place. I saw an acquaintance inside and told her everything. It turns out, she had been creeped out by him as well, outside the hall a few minutes earlier. The worst part is the end. My school posts crime alerts whenever a student reports something. A few days later, everyone on my floor was crowded around the new crime alert poster, and lo and behold, The poster described a peeping Tom who was caught looking into girls' dorm bathroom windows and trying to make small talk with ladies while they were in stalls. The description matched him perfectly. Literally his first name and the scar he had on his shoulder. He did this at 2 different dorm bathrooms before getting arrested.
They are watching you.